This is American Political Thought, Module 2 for class during the 15th to the 19th. And Module 1 ended a little abruptly because my computer just cut off the camera. Evidently, I was going on and on or something like that, or reached some limitation in space. Anyway, I didn't quite finish the discussion of stages of the regime and emergence. And I'd sort of ended, so if you're looking at the notes on page 2, I just finished discussing C and was making the transition to D. And we're getting closer and closer to Wilentz's complex thesis about the nature of the Constitution and its disposition towards slavery. So if you're looking at D, we're now at the period of the Constitution, the formation of the Constitution and its completion with the Bill of Rights in 1791. So ideas, institutions, laws, and policies, and citizen way of life. So here, the regime, the fundamentals of the regime, as we've seen in Storing's book on what the debate between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, you still have the foundational idea of natural rights. And again, the debate within the regime was what set of institutions would best prove the end to the security of those rights. But still on the level of fundamental ideas, you could say the debate was between small republicanism and state sovereignty. And also, by the way, I think this is both a question of fundamental ideas, but also institutions, as you'll see. And of course, this ends with the victory of the Constitution, where you get national republicanism, the large extended republic as the ground of American life, but with the residual small republicanism and the residual elements of state semi-sovereignty, which I cover in the institutional feature next. So what's the new institution that comes into being to reflect this change from the Articles to the Constitution? The institution that the preamble brings into being, and I can cover this extensively in my American government class, the preamble brings into being a new institution called the American people, which again, as I suggested under the Articles, only existed notionally, or as a kind of a derivative concept of who were the American people under the Articles. They were the people on this continent who organized themselves into sovereign states to rebel against Great Britain. Now, Lincoln always had seen, in some ways, an argument that union preceded independence, state independence, although that was certainly ambiguous in the Articles of Confederation. But there's no question that the Constitution now brings into being this vast, diverse nation of individual Americans, and where state semi-sovereignty becomes semi-sovereignty, is residual. Now, I will say this, that the debate between the small and the large republicanism that we saw reflected in Storing's What the Anti-Federalists Are For, while it was not essentially an argument about slavery, there's no question that it had an effect on the issue of slavery, and to some degree, you'd have to say that that the issue of slavery had an effect on whether certain aspects of national republicanism or small republicanism predominated. Now, of course, and again, you would find Federalists and Anti-Federalists on both sides of the slavery question. But the main point I want to make here is that this new institution called the American people, which consists of individual human beings. Now, again, when we get back to Dred Scott, and both Wilentz and Storing comment on this, the question is, did the framers understand that we, the people, included African Americans? And you'll see in Storing's article, Taney, who argues it did not. And again, ironically, as you'll see, I point this out in the next page of the notes. That's Wilentz's and Storing's point that Nicole Hannah-Jones and John Hope Franklin, and in some ways the people that claim systemic racism from the beginning of the American regime, answer that question that the framers did not include we the people, in the African Americans and we the people. Now, as you're going to see, where Wilentz and Storing come in as a kind of a response to Hannah-Jones is did the framers know that, intend that, and that's the intention of the Constitution, and did they therefore completely exclude? Well, the question of the Declaration is did the framers exclude African Americans from humanity? And Wilentz says no. And by the way, for evidence on that, I dropped this in the readings, but you want me to look at it. He argues that Madison was the primary shaper of this, but other great anti-slavery individuals in the founding. Now, again, it's complex to say Madison was an anti-slavery individual because he owned slaves, just like Jefferson. But I think storing shows from pretty extensive Jefferson quotes that that in fact the framers, the drafters of the articles, did understand African Americans to be included in the human race, and therefore entitled to the rights. Not that they enjoyed them, and there was no question, as Madison points out in Federalist 54, and this is what you might take a look at. Madison actually has this fictional character called the Southern Brother, in defending the 3/5 clause, admits that if the state laws were to restore to African Americans the rights which it deprived them of, a full counting in the census couldn't be denied. So there's some textual support for Wilentz's interpretation of Madison. Now, again, the question is, when the regime adopted national constitutionalism, national republican, as its primary set of institutions, did that include or